Collecting on my grandparents' farm back when I was 10 or 12 years old. My brother and I collected, and I would steal arrowheads that he found, and I have those in my collection. Over the years, I've collected Chickasaw relics, and the Chickasaws have all of my relics now at Ada at one of their centers there. We're lucky to have I hope I live long enough to see the cultural centers that they're building out here on the Trace. So we've got a lot of archaeological information in this area. We have a great man here that knows a lot about the Benton culture, which is supposed to be Middle Archaic or 4,000 to 6,000 years old within 5 counties in this area, northeast Mississippi. I've had a lot of pastors and all to argue how old the earth is. Anything older than me I consider to be old, so we're not going to go there. So
anything older than 70, did you say? What? Anything older than 70?
Yeah, for sure. I had a lifelong goal of displaying my artifacts. I think archaeology belongs to everyone. And so today, I'm going to show my entire collection of artifacts, which are 4,000 to 6,000 years ago, and I hope you enjoy the collection. And I'm not sure where it'll end up. Maybe at the Oren Dunn, or maybe at the Chickasaw Cultural Center. But anyhow, there'll be questions and answers. But I have the smartest man in the world about Bentons, and I'd like to introduce you to him today, Mr. Sam Brookes. Let's hear it for him.
Thank you, buddy. Thanks, folks, for coming out. I don't know anything about Bentons. I'll tell you that right off the bat. I'm mystified by them. This is a fabulous collection you're going to see today. We've got some good collectors here from Alabama, and glad to have them here today. We do have one of the real experts on Benton culture, Dr. Jay Johnson, is in the audience today, and we have another great archaeologist, Jessica Crawford, who is an expert on FG beads. I'm going to mention those. She's here with us today. I would love to tell you about these Benton caches and what they symbolize. I don't have a clue. I don't know. We have studied them, and the more I learn about them, the more complex and confused it gets. But let's put things into context. The Middle Archaic period. What was it like back then? Around 6000 BC, there was a climate event called the hypsithermal. It began to get warmer and drier. And in the cultures here, the Indians went down to the local creeks and they got local gravel. That's what they made their tools from, the local gravel. During this Middle Archaic period that Buddy mentioned, they began using Fort Payne chert, which has to be quarried. It's the best material anywhere in the Mid-South, but people didn't use it because they preferred convenient gravels out of streams. All of a sudden, in the Middle Archaic, 85% of the tools in North Mississippi are made from Fort Payne chert. In South Mississippi, they also stop using the local gravels, and they go to the uplands and they get quartzites and sandstones to make their tools from during the Middle Archaic. I believe this is because the drying up of many streams, and these things are silted over. They can't get to the local gravel, so they go to the Fort Payne chert, which is great, and they also go to the sandstones and quartzites, which is not great. It's very poor material. I think this is a result of climate change. Does anything else happen during the hypsithermal period? Yeah, we have some point types called Scott's Bluffs, which are found out on the plains. They're used by bison hunters. We see Scott's Bluffs points begin to come into Mississippi and Louisiana. These are bison hunters. As it warmed up, prairies expanded, and bison moved in, and people followed them in. The Scott's Bluff Point evolves into what's called a Hardin Point in Mississippi, and then it goes into Alabama, evolves into a Lost Lake Point. Well, this is point typology, which is of interest to very few people. What it means is groups from the plains are moving into Mississippi. The environment has changed a great deal. Now, does anything else happen? Yeah, 5000 BC, the first mound in America is constructed in Louisiana, the Montesano Mound. Archaeologists dug this mound when it was destroyed. They didn't publish it because the date was so early. They were expecting maybe a date of 1200 BC, and they got a date of 5000 BC. They just said that it can't be right. That's far too early. It wasn't published until 2019, when us archaeologists finally had to accept that these people knew a lot more a lot earlier than we ever thought they did. What did they find in the Montesano Mound?
Just a quick question. The dating, is that carbon dating that they're doing?
That's carbon dating,
Okay.
yes, sir. And in that mound, they found an effigy bead carved like a bird. And we got the world's authority on them here today with us, Jess Crawford. They also found an oversized biface, could be a variety of Fort Payne shirt, but it has grinding and polishing on it, which is very strange to grind down a chipped implement. You see that in the Benton culture here, but the first mound at 5000 BC. Then in Louisiana, Mississippi, and in Florida, there were numbers of mounds built and mound groups between 3700 and 3000 BC. Some of the earliest mounds in America appeared during this time, the Middle Archaic. In fact, in Louisiana, there are several mound groups: Watson Break, Caney, Frenchman's Bend, and there's a mound group in Mississippi called the Denton site. These are mound groups, but they didn't just pile up dirt and build a mound. They had a set design in mind. These things were laid out in advance, and they built them according to a pattern. A particular pattern on this type, it doesn't have a name, but there are anywhere from 3 to 7 mounds along a bayou, and they'll be aligned north to south. Set back from them will be the second largest mound, and this won't be on the perpendicular. It will be exactly 10 degrees off the perpendicular. What does that mean? We don't have a clue. But it's laid out exactly, and we've measured the Denton site, and it lines up perfectly with these Louisiana sites, these Louisiana mound groups. Also, the effigy beads. These are stone beads. They're carved like birds or animals or combinations thereof. Fabulous works of art. These hunter-gatherers, when I was in college, we thought they were brutish people, almost Neanderthal-like, going out killing animals. They have to build their own houses, make their own clothes. They have not invented pottery or agriculture or the bow and arrow. And in reality, we find they're building mounds and mound groups, and they're making these beautiful stone beads, which to us serve no functional purpose, but I think they're tied into a religious revival or an upheaval going on as a result of this warming period. The oversized bifaces, these big spearhead knives, nobody's going to hack those things and throw them at a deer. Also, they're not knives in the sense of cutting. They don't show any use wear. What are they? I think I know. I think they're atasa, which are ritual dance knives. The Creek Indians in Oklahoma still use atasa today. Today they're carved out of wood. They're almost a foot long. They're painted a blue-green color, which is the same color as Fort Payne shirt. They're painted that color to look like stone knives. They're kept in a box beneath the chief's bench. When it's time for them to be used, the shaman goes and takes them out, and he hands them to the senior matrons, and the senior matrons carry them during the dance. No one else is allowed to touch them. When they finish that dance, the shaman comes and he takes the atasa back and he puts them into a box or a bag, and it goes back under the chief's bench. That goes on today in Oklahoma, and I think you're going to be looking at some atasa today. Many of these are chipped out of stone, but there are also some that are ground and polished. They're effigies of large knives or spears. They would not cut hot butter. Now, the weird thing about the effigy knives, every one I've ever seen, it's ground and polished, has been smashed, broken, ritually killed, as it were. Why would they kill an artifact? Don't know. People say, well, that releases the spirit of the artifact. A recent interview with an Indian, he was asked, do all stones have spirits? And he said, absolutely not. But many of them do. And then he went on to say that when an object is killed like this, it forces the spirit out. So the spirit isn't being released, it's being kicked out. Very strange. I don't begin to understand what's going on there, but there is a pattern. Every one of the ground and polished Atasa I've ever seen, every ground and polished effigy by face has been killed. And not only broken, sometimes they will sit down and break it into 15 or 20 pieces. They spent a lot of time smashing it, probably as much time as they took to make it. Very strange goings on. And the Turkeytails, these are a type of knife blade. You will see here some today. The back end of it has two or four tiny little notches. It resembles a turkey tail. The little area, you couldn't possibly half that because it would immediately break off. So what are the little notches for? I imagine they tied feathers or something like that into them and used them in dance ritual. The effigy beads are distributed, and strangely, many of them are being brought to the Denton Mound Group. There, they're being carefully broken into 2 or 3 pieces, then they're reground and put back into the exchange networks. In college, I was taught that these early Middle Archaic hunter-gatherer types were sort of primitive communists. They were all pretty much equal. That doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like you got some primitive capitalists in there who are making 2 or 3 beads out of one. There's some strange things going on with the exchange networks. But the bottom line on that is, these people are in contact with each other. They're talking to each other. This mound design of the mounds and the offset mound at 10 degrees, these are people in Louisiana and Mississippi. They're in communication. This doesn't happen by accident. These people are in touch with each other. There's also an artifact type, Buddy's brought some in just now, Bannerstones. They're ground and polished objects. Most of them have a hole drilled through them. Most archaeologists will tell you these are atlatl weights. I don't think so. We don't know what they are actually. There's some miniature Bannerstones that are tiny like beads. There's some oversized Bannerstones. Bannerstones are very strange artifacts. They occur in different forms, different types. We give them type names, and different types are always made out of certain rocks. A slate butterfly bannerstone is made out of banded slate, and then there's a different type of butterfly bannerstone. Those are always made out of rose quartz or crystal quartz. The bannerstones here are made out of different types of rock. There's also a phenomenon called the 3 bannerstone rule in the Middle Archaic, and that is when a group of bannerstones are buried in a cache, if there are 3 of them, they'll generally all be the same type. If it's more than 3, 3 will be of one type and the remainder will be a different type of bannerstone. This is a rule that goes on in the Middle Archaic, and it was important to these people. I have no idea what it means, but you see it time and time and time again. That disappears in the Late Archaic. But effigy beads, oversized bannerstones, oversized knife blades, ritual breakage, mound groups laid out according to a design. There's a lot going on in the Middle Archaic. It is far, far different from the hunter-gatherers I envisioned when I was a student at Ole Miss. It's one of the most important, complicated times in prehistoric America, in my opinion. And I told people that this Benton caches, these oversized points that you're gonna see today, these are Mississippi's archaeological treasures. It's the greatest find in Mississippi, in my opinion. The hypsothermal, global or regional warming at least, warming and drying, it went from 6,000 to 3,000 BC. A lot of archaeologists don't like my trying to tie this Middle Archaic behavior in with climate change, but I think it is part of the reason that this is going on, this Benton culture. So, the hypsothermal ends about 3000 BC or just after that, and conditions come up to a normal climate regime. Does anything else happen when the hypsothermal ends? Absolutely. They quit making these oversized bifaces. They don't make them anymore. They quit using the Fort Payne chert, which constitutes 85% of the rock that they use in the Middle Arctic. They go back to local gravel. Even though Fort Payne chert is the finest chert in all of the Mid-South, they quit using it essentially. Way less than 5% of materials are made from Fort Payne chert, probably less than 1% if the truth be known. They go back to local gravel. In South Mississippi, where they're using quartzites and sandstones, they go back 100% to the local gravel. They don't use those anymore. They don't make big weapons. Those beautiful effigy beads, they quit making them. They don't make anymore. The mounds and mound groups, they quit building mounds at 3000 BC. They stop altogether. They don't build any mounds for over 1,500 years. Mound building goes away. The Bannerstones, they still make Bannerstones, but they make very, very few. And they tend to be clustered at larger sites. You don't get the variety of styles and forms that you did in the Middle Archaic. I don't think that's a coincidence that the hypsothermal ends, and so does mound building and oversized, but all of this changes at the same time, and I think it's tied in. That's what I know about Benton. Now, Buddy said I know a lot of it. I wish I could tell you what these caches represent. I've heard all of them are with burials. I've heard none of them are with burials. I've heard all of them with prepared clay altars. I've heard none of them are with prepared clay altars. My favorite story was in a bar in Greenwood one night when a fellow next to us found out as an archaeologist. He said those things represent the number of children that a chief had, and the ones that are broken represent children who died. Okay, that's as good as anything, I guess. Some of these caches have 50 or 60 pieces in them.
Got a lot of wives.
Busy chief, he didn't have time to do much chiefly work. He was involved with his wives, obviously. But I want you to look at these things and appreciate them. And if you have any idea what you think they might be, please let me know, because I would love to know. But the Middle Archaic, it's more complex than we ever dreamed. These people knew a lot more, a lot earlier than we ever gave them credit for. And it caused a revolution in archaeology in the 1980s when we had to admit that the first mounds were built in Louisiana and Mississippi and Florida a couple thousand years before we ever thought they could do it. Again, they had no agriculture, no bow and arrow, and they just still did phenomenal work. So that's what I've got to say. Buddy, you're back.
Brandon, Boyd, all of you guys come on up and we'll uncover the relics. I've asked you to be very careful with these. If you have questions, you can ask me, and you can ask certainly Sam. Sam knows a lot more about them than me, but they came from our area, so they belong to our area. So we're going to uncover these. I've got some more back here, and I've got some Bannerstones, so be real careful coming down through here. I'll ask you that. I'd hate to see one of my plaques broken, so you're welcome now to come to see some of the, I think, one of the greatest collections, even though it's mine. But, you'll see it. Okay.